All right, Directorpiece theater narrator guy, it's the cops.
Hip here. You'll never catch me, coppers.
Pull over the, you.
If I just jump from this very tall fire escape, I'll get away scot-free.
Do I make you horny, baby? Yeah. Oh, behave. Yeah. Let's get ready for some mask quotes, baby. Yeah.
I forgot that you started it with an intro.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Do I make you horny?
Yeah. Those amazing The Mask quotes. 1994's The Mask.
Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah, we were saying that in the Blockbusters video for years afterwards. Yeah.
So, Adam.
Yes, Abe.
You might be asking why I've done this.
I know why. I can see the glint in your eye.
Like, why is Abe about to do a whole episode on The Mask?
I'm starting to think that we're picking movies either to troll each other or to troll Mike. Those are the reasons why we do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, either it's, here's a movie I love, or it's like, what's going to really at first make Mike be like, come on, really? And then, like, you have to prove it. And he's like, well, okay.
That might be true. I think the answer is that this is my show and I get to do what I want and what I love. And I love doing this. I want to talk about The Mask. And I want to talk about color in The Mask.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because I gotta. Huh? You're
coming in with some really weird energy. I'm liking it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, but for real, like sometimes I think that bad movies, get a bad rap sometimes, and this is one of them. I think that it's like kind of been my long time thing in the show. Sometimes the craftsmanship and like the visual strategies that the directing team employs, for all intents and purposes, are just as good as like what we think of as good movies, Like the craftsmanship doesn't save the movie, but it also isn't a bad movie because of the craftsmanship. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, right. I think you're saying, at least I'm hearing you say, that even bad movies, somebody cared a lot and tried to make an artistic statement with them.
Yeah.
Whether they succeeded or not is usually
I think it's more obvious with impressive like CG movies like Transformers or like badly written action films that still have these set pieces that are like, oh, look at that. That's amazing. So that's obviously like what I'm saying is very simple when it comes to those films. But in the case of comedy, there's not much to be in awe of other than like the comedian in the movie, right? It's just Jim Carrey in this one doing his Jim Carrey stuff, right?
A lot of people think that's what comedy filmmaking is fundamentally. It's like just roll the camera, let the guy do his thing.
And I think there's some truth to that. It's usually comedies are usually just especially in this era and eras before, it's usually just people in rooms talking and they're just charismatic and funny. Yeah, I don't need to explain comedy.
But you could. But
there's a whole team there and, aka filmmakers who start to like develop these things to do. And they usually include like visual nods to the themes of the movie. And like in the case of The Mask, it's always hilarious because what are you doing, buddy? What are you doing, The Mask? You making art? Huh? So
what do you got? What do you do?
So maybe I think most people have seen this. They've definitely seen the memes. It's definitely a meme film. It's up there with Shrek, Another Green Man. This one, it's obviously the themes that play are like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing they got going. So and like it kind of talks about how you make bad choices and right choices when you gain power, and like let's figure it out. Stan Liepkis gets this mask and he's kind of a dick about it because the mask is kind of this chaotic, force of nature. Doesn't really matter to what I'm saying today so much because I'm talking about color. some people can argue that like red means passion or black means death. And there's color theories about that kind of stuff that you're taught in art school, right? That I think is pretty available to most people with a brain. And that's fine, but that's not really what I'm talking about. Today, if you go and rewatch The Mask, I'm talking about identifying elements in the story and then the directors tying them together with a color or a color strategy and continuing to do so to promote that system in your movie until the end. That's the thing that filmmakers do with color, with, texture, with, staging, with blocking, with lighting, with makeup, hair, all that stuff. Surprisingly, The Mask also does this is what I'm arguing. So somebody stop me.
Get out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Get out of here. I will tell you, I just want you to know before you get into the substance of this argument, I hated this. I hated this movie.
Yeah?
I hated it.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Let's
did you remember
that.
it fondly? Did you remember this fondly, this movie?
No. It's in that weird space where it's like, when I watched it, I thought it was okay. It wasn't like Austin Powers. It wasn't something that I would like quote or walk around, but it was memorable and big enough that like you couldn't like erase it from the zeitgeist and you couldn't avoid it. And so it always had that kind of clout in society post 1994. There's also like the swing craze in like 1997 and stuff. Yeah.
That really stood out for me is that like this movie was ahead of that and it took over pop culture for like, not took over, but it was a big move back.
And that
was,
this is 94, 96 was Swingers, which is usually credited as the,
but it's not,
because 1997 was like Big Bad Voodoo Daddy and stuff. But this features a band. I forget the name of the band, but this features a band that they're actually in it at the Coco Bongo, and they are one of the big hits. It's the Yo Pochenko or whatever it is. Song.
Yes.
And that was on the top 40 or whatever.
That's interesting. Can I just say, like, just impressions walking away from it? This is like not even in my top 5 Jim Carrey comedies.
No.
Like, it's like not even like now in hindsight, but I remembered every single line from the trailers. This movie was ubiquitous.
That's what I'm saying. That's why you couldn't avoid it. It's truly, of the films that I can think of for Jim Carrey, it's the one that's the most smoking.
There's a lot of smoking, but not a lot of fire, is my argument.
Yeah,
here.
there you go. It's a lot of hot air. He's way too big. Like, I mean, he is big. He's always been big.
But what's he supposed to do, though? I look at this movie and I see that it's bad, and I think Jim Carrey is doing so much better than everybody else in it is doing.
He's doing a lot. Yeah, he's really...
He's working very hard. He's not very good at a believable straight man at this point in his career.
No, I mean, he's like
Stanley
comedy Sisyphus. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, but you can tell he's putting it in check as Stanley Ipkiss, and Stanley Ipkiss is just not a very compelling character.
No,
but
he's
when he puts the mask on, well, and he's not a very good everyman because he's Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey's not an everyman. But when Jim, at least not at that point.
Sure.
But when he puts the mask on, like, he's doing physically some extremely impressive things, like the dancing that he does is like, wow, he can really dance.
Yeah.
Like, in that bullshit makeup he has to do, like, he's really going for it.
Yeah. The scene with where he's jumping around the cops and like leading the dance.
Yeah, the chicky boom. That's the best scene in the movie.
It's insane
what
how
I thought. Yeah.
Like charismatic he is. I mean,
yes.
It's not exactly my cup of tea. I don't know whose cup of tea it is, who's like really in the mess. But I think it's like a meme at this point, right? It's a meme to like kind of like Shrek, which is a legitimately good movie, or like B movie, which is a legitimately bad movie. The quality of it doesn't matter as much as like the memes that came from it make it like push it in the weird zeitgeist stratosphere of like untouchable in a way. Like, it's not like a qualitative assessment. It's just there and imprinted in all of us, and we laugh at it because it's like, why of all things this? Like, there's so much in the world to be
Right.
not bored about.
Right.
And you chose this to, like, be in front of my eyes and be in my brain. And,
Right.
like, we share it together. Memes are strange. I don't understand.
Agreed.
Spicy meatball is what they are.
By the way, when I found out that line was in this movie, I almost called you instantly.
Yeah,
I was
I know.
like, my God, you've been quoting The
told me-
Mask all this time?
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit.
Mhm.
I was like very happy and also angry.
Yeah.
Like both things at the same time. It's like, that's fucking what?
Yep. And the reason that you know that line, that's a testament to, like, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's bad kind of thing. Because you knew the line, you didn't even know where it was from. You just knew that sometimes people say that's a spicy meatball.
Well, I've known you to say it.
Yeah, because I think The Mask is hilarious.
So you still think it's funny? You still find it funny?
I mean, I do. I hope you understand with all of my caveats that I just gave how I think it's funny.
Of course,
that's
no.
more important than, like, I am, like, going out and buying Mask merch like Jeff May or Tom Ryman buying, like, superhero statues and being like, look at how cool this is. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's cool. I don't think it's funny and cool.
If you show up in that yellow hat, that'll be that'll seal you in my heart.
But
I know
it's
you
also
would.
because I like chaos. You know this.
Yes, and
it's like my
that
main
is
deal.
what this character is.
A little bit.
I see the Abe appeal. He's not Bugs Bunny enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bugs Bunny is, like, omnipotent, obviously, but also, like, approachable. Like, he's not an aggressive person.
Yeah, this guy is.
This guy's very aggressive.
The Mask
and by the way,
or Big Head, as he's known from the comic as well.
Oh, that's interesting.
Depending on, I'll talk. Let's talk about that. It comes from the comic. There is a comic, and it's Dark Horse.
Yeah.
Dark Horse made this, which is a well-known, like, darker publishing company for comics. And this adaptation takes, like, some serious liberties in order to make it a, like, PG Jim Carrey vehicle, right? The comic is not PG. It's very dark, features, like, graphic violence. I haven't read a lot of it, but it feels like it can get into, like, the Spawn territory at times. People legitimately go insane as a byproduct of wearing the mask, for example. Though they do keep a lot of the, like, he's a sex-crazed lunatic. It's still a superhero story, but they're just darker themes. They're like adult only. So it goes into the story arcs about, like, abuse and such. It's just not very similar to the product that they made. I haven't read enough to know if, like, the pop culture references and stuff, I think that might entirely be Jim Carrey's doing, because of, like, that's kind of one of the methodologies of his comedy, but I can't really speak to that. I'm not an expert on the comic.
I know they did effectively the same thing in Ace Ventura. Like, Ace Ventura is supposed to be sleazier than it is.
Right, yeah. But he's all of a sudden he's, Jack Torrance in The Shining for no reason. And it's just like, oh, I guess that will be fine. Or, in this movie, he does, like, a whole bit where he accepts an Oscar. And everyone in the room, he has, like, reality bending powers. Like, in the MCU, he has the reality stone. Like, everyone buys it. Like, they're crying because he gave an impassioned speech, and then they're immediately thrown into, no, I had a gun on you. So it, like, makes no sense. And that slapstick kind of non sequitur aspect of comedy is definitely what unhinges this thing.
It's cartoon logic. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. Like, it's most clearly manifest during the Chicky Boom scene.
Sure.
When he actually makes people against their will join into the dance, and then they get sucked up into it. Yeah. It's very duck season, rabbit season, man. Like, that's what it is,
I honestly don't care anymore about, like, the thematic evaluation of this film. Like, I don't care to talk about it.
You're killing me, because that's exactly what I want to talk about.
No, I don't want to talk about that at all.
I know. Go ahead.
This is, like, I actually want to look at it like a craftsman. Like, I want to separate, like, the shittiness of the movie and look at, like, what's actually good about the movie. I think that's funny. But I totally get it. So feel free to chime in at any time.
I'll do my best to keep on target.
But I do want to get on task and talk about what, like, I think The Mask does.
I'm ready.
Imagine a film and it's not The Mask, right? And then like hear me out. So
I'm ready.
There's a few colors in this movie that are called out and become like demarcators for specific things. And there's specific strategies. They don't seem apparent at first, but they're absolutely there, and I'm going to argue they're intentional. The colors that I'm mainly going to talk about today are green. That makes sense. You know?
Yeah.
Red
right, of course.
Is definitely playing, has a strategy. And black and white as a kind of combo unit has a strategy. Obviously, green is the mask. It represents this kind of like, I guess... like a sinful and moral color tagging scenes, because there you can see it's not just in the mask itself, it's other places that I'll go into. Red and black and white are all kind of more together. They're more neutral in aspects of like, I don't think that it's usually what people are wearing in this movie. And in my opinion, because of one very specific scene, it represents power. Green usually represents lack of control, but red, black, and white, if someone's painted with strong reds, blacks, and whites, they usually have the power in the scene. If Stanley is involved in those scenes, it typically means what he's doing is wrong or has an opportunity to do what is right, and by the end of the film is doing what's right. Other color symbolism going on in this film comes from specifically the scene that I'm referencing is at the beginning where Stanley meets Tina, Cameron Diaz, and argues that his black and white tie is it's a power tie, and it makes him feel powerful. So it's literally
the Rorschach.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
They have that Rorschach.
They have the whole conversation.
He also doesn't answer her when she's like, "What do you see in the tie?" He like can't answer it.
Right, because he doesn't know what power that. Yeah. He doesn't have power yet. He wants power, but anyway.
Correct. That was my favorite bit of writing in the movie, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought that scene was also but it's like one of those things. Like as a screenwriter, you're trying to shovel into comedies like somebody explaining the character, and like you know what I mean, because they want to make as much space as they can for Jim Carrey to do smoking and like twirling in and out of scenes with his fucking weird eyes and shit. Mm. And so they have to jam these like lines through, you know, it's a problem that we have in comedies. And that was actually a really nice scene. I kind of wish they'd just stuck with that as the only explanation of his character's flaw. Like it would have been like, ooh, really nice. Anyway. Yeah.
There you go. A good scene. And it sets up the power dynamic, color dynamic that I'm going to talk about. So there's some general green stuff in the movie, right? Like, for example, Adam, did you know that the mask in the movie is green? Somebody stop me. The second one that's generally is the Coco Bongo sign, and the exterior and all the neon lights in it are green. That kind of gets back into the sinful aspect or like the immoral aspect. I think they're doing something with that. The interior also has a lot of greens, strong greens. And I'm going to show exactly how they do that. The radiation of the mask itself is green. And most importantly, perhaps, the wides of the city and one pivotal scene at Landfill Park, everything in around the city has a green hue until the very end, which it doesn't. The city itself is oozing with sewage. This is also from the comic, but it's also like if you like stop the film when they show the wides of like some of the buildings, like the town itself is like marked with like ill repute. It's kind of like a Gotham. Like I was going to
ask you that. Yeah. So you're saying that it is supposed to be a New York adjacent kind of city?
Yes, but and much like Gotham, it like is not a great place. You know?
Yeah,
like, there's a lot of crime.
It had a real Miami vibe to me.
It does, because I think the Coco Bongo stuff also makes you feel like there's this tropical theme going on all the time.
And the color schemes fit into a Miami.
That's right.
Vibe too.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
Great.
Pastel
I'm
choices.
Ahead of you. Great.
So let's get into particular scenes and how the visual strategy is employed and what I mean by visual strategy. So let's look first at the Coco Bongo valet scene, which is like right at the top. Stanley gets a loaner car and he's going to the Coco Bongo to see Tina, to see her show. And he can't get in because his friend who's got tickets, like he gets, pushed out by the bouncer. And there's a scene with the valet wearing a big red jacket. So we got greens and reds in the scene. And he's the quote unquote, like the valet is quote unquote the problem in this scene because he's making Stanley confront the truth of his reality. Like Tina's seeing him with his, like his diapers on, like he's powerless. Stanley doesn't want that to happen, obviously, in front of Tina. So notice how Tina is wearing white, black pinstripe dress.
Yep.
The other power person who is the valet himself, who's like, here's your car, sir. Here's your car. He's like, that's not my car. That stuff is all. And then if you look at Stanley, he's wearing muted colors almost entirely as when he is Stanley Ipkiss. And it's indicative of their life. I think it's a nice little touch too, because Tina wearing black and white is probably indicative of their last meeting where Stanley mentioned the black and white power tie. So like it's in her head that these are powerful colors. So she wears a dress that is powerful.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Another time, the first time that the mask appears, he's wearing the mask becomes he's got like a red zoot suit / pajamas. It's very strange.
He does.
And later in his first going out in town, he wears a circus performer type get up for the balloon animal sequence. Both very strong reds, and it makes him pop from his background. The auto shop that he goes to viciously assault those men is kind of bizarre because when you look at the exterior shots of it and the interior lighting, the exterior has neon green signs and it's like against a background of brick walls, which frankly just feels impossible. So once again, it's me going like, this kind of seems intentional. And then when they cut inside, there's like strong green lighting. And the background on the auto shop is that they're also of ill repute. They are scamming him. And so he's coming back and kind of giving them their comeuppance. Which makes sense with the themes of like green is something to be like stamped out, or green is like unnatural or out of control.
Yeah. Can I just also add, given that interpretation, it's interesting. The money is not very green.
Yeah,
the money is very black and white, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it fits because the money is noticeably not green enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looks fake in a world where not everything looks fake.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that adds to your theory, actually.
Yeah, I think it's because that they choose colors around the world to be more muted so that the sequences with the mask pop. That's something I'll go into a little bit in terms of like design theory. I think that's very astute.
I want to lodge a question now that I don't want to derail your argument, and I think
hit me.
So the question is the yellow suit that I think is the most iconic mask suit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed that that's not among the colors that you're listing. What are your thoughts on that? Because I have one small theory, but I want to let you say first.
Yeah, I think it has to do with tertiary colors.
Okay.
Which is something I want to get into a little later.
Okay.
But if you notice that his like typical getup, he actually has a more straightened, like literally a tie that is the same power tie, that they're now stronger, more bold lines. Like if you look at the tie that he wears, it's the same as his power tie. So that's one thing that deals with that wardrobe choice. I think the yellow it's not really a part of this theory. There's not a lot of strong yellows in this movie. I think it's just literally one of the things to make the green pop, because when you get into,
which it does.
Yeah, it does, because just like when you look at colors, yellow and green are, they look nice next to each other, because they're fairly close.
I have a theory that I think will reinforce what you're doing here. My theory is that the yellow is a subtle way of reinforcing our association with him as a protagonist, because we all kind of have yellow trench coat Dick Tracy in our head.
Oh, like, so it's like more of a cultural nod.
Yes,
to
I think so. Because if you're a director, you're worried that this character might be unlikable if he goes too far, and you also don't want to. You don't want to like rein Jim Carrey in. You want Jim Carrey to be able to do what he does, because that's what the movie's about, really. Let's enhance Jim Carrey. That's the premise of the movie. Is let's get more than Jim Carrey could do. So I feel like as a director, you would want to kind of counterbalance that with like visual iconography that helps sell how you're supposed to feel about him. Right? And Dick Tracy, pretty recent film. It'd only been a couple years. And that outfit is very close to what Dick Tracy.
It's not something that we wouldn't think about at the time when it came out.
Yeah, because that's also a swingish.
Psychologically, subconsciously. I mean, I buy that. I think it's just like one of those color choices. In addition to what you said, that it just really. It's like the starkness of the colors that I'm going to talk about, because there are like muted reds and muted greens and, grays in this film that don't really abide the strong choices. But my argument is more that if you look at the actual colors and the true color values of them, we're talking about different greens, it's a difference between like crimson and like burgundy or something like that, both red. But do they represent the same feeling of red?
To me, except for that yellow suit, this movie has a bunch of colors in it. It's got cyan in it. It's got like
blue,
but really it's green, red, and black and white. Like you completely identified it. Like there's a lot of browns. Ipkiss wears a lot of browns.
Yeah, I think those muted colors. Yeah, it's actually I'm going to talk about some of the specifics.
Cool.
But just chronologically, still in the movie. Nico, the kind of auxiliary villain, like the villain that causes the real villain to like become more villainous. Nico, who's the guy that you're introduced with a scene in his like huge studio apartment, I guess, where he's golfing off of Dorian's face. Right. And he's kind of like, he's the power vacuum, but he never really gets the mask. So he becomes in the third act kind of it doesn't matter. And if you notice the colors in that, you get a lot of stark black and whites in the background of his apartment, but his floor is inexplicably a red carpet with a circle of green carpet, which is where that's the golf green. So he's in this circle. He's eternally in this circle of like red and green, which are both power colors. And he does his work, I guess. He does his mob work when he's in the green circle. And that's just something I think that was probably intentional.
100%. You and I are going to talk, as soon as you've wrapped up this argument, we're going to talk about this villain. I need to talk a lot about him.
All right.
I'm like, somebody stop me on this, because I got one for you on this. Anyway.
Ipkiss, on the other hand, now jumping kind of closer to the when it's normal and not like the stark colors and yellow suit and the strong green mask and the blacks and whites, or the power control characters like Tina and Dorian and Nico. You get the valets. You also get the bouncers at the Coco Bongo, and they all wear black and white in this movie. That's a choice. Yep. Every single one of the bouncers wear black and white in this movie. If you look at Ipkiss's apartment, literally they light it greener as the movie goes along. Something you don't at first notice, but look at the scene where the detective visits him to ask him about the pajamas, because he gets shot at and a piece of his tie falls off as the mask and it turns into his pajamas, which the detective saw and made note of that they're stupid pajamas earlier in a different scene. So he was like Ipkiss, and that's how he kind of connects. He has something to do with the mask. And when the detective arrives, there's green light coming through the windows, which makes no sense. just another note. I think it's probably something that as the film goes along and Ipkiss is becoming more and more enthusiastic about being the mask, and like he feels like the mask is more him than he is, which we learn later that that's the wrong step because it's typical comedy structure, story structure.
It feels very. It feels like it's descended from a kind of sensibility that you saw, like in a lot of '80s comedies. Like one that really stands out is like Heathers. The movie Heathers, they do a lot of like that kind of lighting where they're really, really aggressively using color as lighting to tell you themes.
Yes.
And Heathers, like they make such obvious color choices, like it's like this one's the red one, this one's the blue one. So like, it hits you on the head a little bit, but it felt very much of that same school.
Twice in the film, Tina, once when she returns to the bank after the bank robbery / the first like mask encounter, she's wearing black, white, and red. Very strong blacks, whites, and reds. Like it's like scarlet red and black and white dress again, or like blouse and skirt combo. And then in Landfill Park, where they kind of have their first, Tina wants to meet the mask because she's going to betray him, supposedly. We don't really know yet. She's in black and white, and when the mask appears, he's this French guy and does this whole French bit, and he's wearing black, white, red neckerchief,
red
coat,
cravat,
and pants, and black and white shirt. So that's a lot. That's kind of a lot of specifics that they like are marking these characters with these colors. And I don't know or want to really go into why that's interesting, or if it's a good choice, or if the movie's good. That's not what this is about. It's about the fact that they did this work. And I want to talk about, so now you know what the colors are, and like I feel like I've proven, and if you rewatch the movie, they're there. These nods are there, and they're continuous through the movie. It's not like she just has one outfit. They're doing this. So if you're a filmmaker and you're like, okay, how do I make these colors sustain? But also I have many, many scenes to get through with many, many choices on things like what's my wallpaper in this scene? What's the background of this scene? What's this look like? You have to clearly match your visual strategy and iconography that you've already set up and make sure that you're not getting in the way of it. So choices like these red, green, black, and white demarcations force the filmmakers into that choice. And by that, I mean, what do you do with all the other stuff? You kind of have to choose around the basic color theory you deployed, right? To maintain that the movie's still visually pleasing, and that, often filmmakers will they'll control the palette in different ways. And I just want to remind everyone again that this is an episode about the color analysis of the 1994 movie, The Mask. Somebody stop me. If you watch this movie, look at scenes like there's a scene in Ben Stein's office where there's no mask shit. There's no mask shit. It's just a Stanley Ipkiss talking to Ben Stein. That's all it is. And if you look at the walls, they're all muted greens, reds, grays, blacks, and whites. This is because when the director isolates a palette and works with the production design team, they ultimately make decisions within palette, even if they don't know if that fabric or wallpaper is going to be used in a particular scene at first. Like, that's just how filmmaking works. It's like, this is our color palette. Okay, I know that almost all the time that I'm going to look at wallpaper, it's got to look good in this color palette. And so then they decide later, that's great for that wall or something like that. This is something that often happens in Hollywood filmmaking because they have to kind of do their work before they can do their work.
Yeah, you have to end up, if you make a strong choice like this, you end up having to sort of juggle individual applications for a while you're trying to find good executions. So you're trying to find a really great wallpaper before you're trying to find the wallpaper for Ben Stein's office.
Yes.
And then when you have the good wallpaper, it's okay, so these are the four I could be. Well, this one's too saturated or whatever to put in Ben Stein's office. So this is the one we're going to use. And it may not say exactly the thing that each of these colors are supposed to say, but it reinforces the application in a broader sense, so it's fine.
It also visually looks good because it doesn't feel like it's a different movie.
Right.
It's smart to keep those colors going, but at the same time protect the audience's eyes from noticing that color when the directors want you to, is essentially the thrust of it.
Like, what was that? I think it was the movie, I think it was called Hero. There was that film, it was a foreign language film that was basically...
Jet Li.
Yeah. Yes, Jet Li. It was 3 retellings, and everything in each retelling was just one color.
Yes.
And that's how they use the color. And, like, you just never stop seeing
loud.
it.
Yeah. Very loud,
you never
but
stop
very
seeing
stylized and very cool.
Yeah.
I think when we say stylized, I'm arguing that this also has style. I mean, it's the mask, but it's also like it's a muted style in a lot of ways versus like a film like Hero where it's like kind of thought of as artistic because it's like, oh yes, it's all yellow, it's all red, it's all blue. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I see that, but it's just saying it's louder. It's not necessarily doing anything different than what the mask is doing.
I mean, I would argue, that in a lot of ways, the mask is a much more subtle film than Hero, at least with its like sort of background art. A lot more subtle. Doesn't make it better, but
teach their own, man.
For sure. Well, I mean, you're saying that's exactly what you're saying too. Is like Hero is a blast of color, like the game Splatoon or something. Each scene, you know, and the mask at least it has these like subtler variations. Anyway,
yeah, a subtler film.
That's what I said.
Yeah, good. We're on the same page.
Yeah. You fucking whirlwinded me into your opinion finally,
like a Tasmanian devil. There's 2 like methods we see time and time again in film. This is like film school for all you people who didn't want to pay for it. 2 methods so if we're taking this thing that we're talking about, there's 2 great ways to do this, and Mask does both. One of them is choosing, I want you to all imagine in your head what you think the color wheel looks like, right? Like imagine the color wheel. There's something, you know how there's primary and if you don't remember your elementary school color science, there's like, you got primary, secondary colors, right? There's something called tertiary colors, right? A lot of people don't teach this, but you kind of get the gist because it's kind of doing the same thing. That's usually when you mix primary and secondary color together. And you get these in-between colors, like mixing blue and magenta, a primary and a secondary color. And you get violet, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're following me? So this now reminds you of blue, and it ties it to the thing that, let's say if I wanted blue to be important, makes me think, oh, it's a cool color. It's like blue. It's blue adjacent. But it's not blue. So this is kind of what we're talking about with the like Ben Stein walls and stuff with the greens. They're not the mask green. They're like a muted green. And this is done in a lot of the walls and staging of the scenes in the mask, like Stanley's apartment, the bank, the streets, and as well Landfill Park. Another methodology that you'll use is not just choosing different color values, which is what we would say is the, blue, magenta, violet difference. But there's a strategy in terms of additive color theory, which is taking your main colors, like green in this movie, and choosing art elements and placing them in the movie in just lower saturation. Now, by desaturating a color, that's what we call a pastel. Pastels have a high value or color brightness, like they're bright green, but they have low saturation. That might be confusing to some people who haven't really studied what color theory is, but just like kind of, you can search those terms and see what's the difference between color brightness and color saturation, and bada bing, bada boom. You got it.
You got yourself a spicy meatball.
That's a spicy meatball.
Yeah.
These are usually placed in scenes where we see like the starker colors themselves. So if you're presenting like the mask in his full maskness, usually if you want to keep your color palette intact, you will make pastels do the work for you. So the bolder, more primary colors pop from the background of the pastel walls. This happens in like mainly the Coco Bongo. It also happens even just in the streets and like the greens that I was talking about that kind of evoke almost all of the city. what you get in the end is an array of colors that feel contextually cadent, but the main colors in your color palette strategy that I was mentioning before are never quite drowned out. And then lastly, I guess there's 3 tactics. This one's less of a tactic of how you use color and how you don't use color. So it's jazz. It's the notes you don't play, which is removing color value entirely. So the tactic, again, that the mask uses is just developing scenes that will have similar, like still use the strategies of like the pastels or the tertiary colors, but they remove like the color green altogether. This is a more drastic change to the psychology of the audience. And so smarter filmmakers typically leave it for sections that would thematically make sense, which this movie does, for example. You notice that all the Peggy Brandt scenes, if you don't remember Peggy Brandt, she's the redhead reporter who is at first seems like an ally because she's like, she's like, oh, you're Mr. Nice Guy to Stanley Ipkiss.
Women really want that.
Yeah, and she's trying to interview him about like the auto robbery / assault. But then later we learn that she's actually in cahoots with Dorian, the big bad of the movie, and literally turns against and betrays Stanley.
Yes, that actually was a surprising move, by the way.
Yeah, because there wasn't. That's I think canon with like the. I think it's canon with the
comic.
With comic, yeah.
That's incredible. Wow.
So yeah, it's there's a whole thing to unpack. I don't even know what the comic is like, but it feels very like men rights activist to me. It's like you can't trust any of these women, man. But I don't know.
The view of romance and love is, let's say, antiquated. Because
indeed.
Let's remember that Stanley Ipkiss describes his version of the mask as being a like a romance crazy wild man. That's how he describes that character.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
So when you look at the Peggy Brandt scenes, they just don't have green the entire movie.
Right.
Until she betrays him. Then literally the next shot when she's like receives the money, which the movie might as well make the green emit a green light, or the money emit a green light, because it cuts to where the goons take Stanley, like they're gonna kill him, to the section where they're in this warehouse, and it's still like these industrial rollers, I think, for like printing newspapers.
Yeah,
and it's absolutely bathed in green light. Yep. So we're back, baby. It's mask time. And it's also the first scene where Dorian puts on the mask. So in that way, they've removed green until it was important again. But Peggy Brandt felt like a respite from the green. I think, again, intentional. Likewise, Act 2 and...
It has to be, because let me tell you something. As a fellow member of the redhead tribe, green is a color we look fucking amazing against.
Mm-hmm.
Like we sparkle like an emerald against a green background. It takes a hell of a lot of restraint not to put some green behind Peggy Grant.
Like ruby on,
we really do,
ruby
baby.
on emerald.
Yeah, we really do.
Love it.
So you need to know that.
So yeah. Wow, you're picking up what I'm dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Likewise, in Act 2 and 3, there's a section where Stanley just no longer has the mask because of story reasons. And strong reds, greens, blacks, and whites are not featured at all during the section. It took me 2 times watching the mask to realize that if you watch the, 20-minute, 25-minute section in Act 2 and 3 where he doesn't have the mask, where he's in the...
in jail?
He's in jail and such.
Yeah.
They just don't exist in the color palette. And that's crazy amount of control. It throws in the face of the thing I was saying earlier, where it's like you want the movie to feel like it's not a different movie, but it kind of shows you how flexible this theory is too. It's still just doing exactly the things I'm saying, but like we all watch movies with fresh eyes. When you cut to a new scene, you're not going to, and it doesn't have any of the colors that the previous scene had. That's not too much of a leap for a filmmaker to say like, I can't do that. Then they'll lose like the thread.
No,
it's kind of a soft touch, is I guess what I'm saying.
A little bit. I did notice the moonlight in that.
Yes.
That was when I was like, man, that moonlight's really blue.
I think they chose the blues, but if you notice, that blue is always the blue moonlight. You just noticed it less in his apartment and such because he didn't have those greens and stuff. Again, color theory. It's kind of important. It's kind of a intense craftsmanship, like production designers and art directors and costumers, like they have to know this shit. And it's not like that one. Why? Because I like it. No, it's like, no, it makes the character not like I lose the power of the character. They don't pop, like you have to know this shit. Or
and it's clearly a different application than say somebody like Jeannot, who was working at the same time and used similar color palettes in movies like Amelie. Like to my memory, doesn't take breaks from his color palette application. He just sort of, the world is this.
Right.
Which is different than what The Mask is. Like, yes, The Mask is giving us a world, but it's also like giving us a break from the world when the narrative requires it. And that's interesting.
And then the last bit chronologically is the ending of the movie. Once the film is resolved and he throws the mask off the bridge where he found it, and he gets the girl and all that stuff. The city itself is now golden orange. It's like sunset or sunrise. You can't really tell because it's like all the backgrounds are matte paintings, but there's no cool colors, no greens, no blues. It's like a sunset shot, like I said. So I think that's because it's over and the mask no longer has power. We kind of have we introduce these new colors. And a lot of movies pay attention to this color separation for the denouement because the end of the movie should literally feel like we've gone to a new place. And so, in conclusion, I think this is design. It's not a good movie. But again, my big thing on the show is that the choices that are often made most laughable in cinema ought not be placed at the doorstep of things like costumes, production design, the art department, the builders, the makeup artists. It's usually the writers, like the producers, and ultimately the director. That's it. Somebody stop me. That's my theory about the
Mask. I cannot believe how many times you got away with saying that. I cannot believe it. Okay, listen. Am I allowed? I don't want to ruin anything, but can I take us on a new journey here briefly?
Yeah, let's talk about Nico or whatever you want to talk about.
Okay, so that guy, why does the movie need him to have the mask at all?
Wait, are you talking about Dorian?
I'm talking about
Nico never has the mask.
Are we? So then I'm getting him crossed. Is Dorian the guy who's like the sleazy underling who's rebelling against his overlord we'd barely even meet?
Yes, that's Dorian. Nico is the king. But
he doesn't matter. Yeah, he's such a disposable figure. Yeah.
It's just that I was just mentioning him once because he was part of the power structure of the movie. And he is shown even over Dorian as having green and red in his house.
Sure. Literally just to make that artistic statement, probably, because he ends up not mattering one bit. So Dorian puts on the mask and like basically does one trick. And that one trick is he swallows bullets and spits them out, which is what kills his boss, right? And I'm like, okay, that's a mask thing. But like, I just found myself feeling like, what if they'd cast Alan Rickman in this part? You know what I mean? Like, what if they'd cast somebody who was actually funny as a villain and let him do some mask shit?
It should be two masks. Like we should because like Stanley gets whatever the mask is, whatever Big Head is. He is like quotationalism is his thing. He's a rapscallion. The other guy's just evil. Even the dog is like playful and like
it's funny.
Yeah, they even build into the thing. They say Loki is like the mask is tied to Loki, the god, who's a chaotic god, trickster god. Yeah. And there's no trickster whatsoever in Dorian when he puts on the mask. That's true.
Yeah, he turns into basically an Arnold clone. And I couldn't help but think like, why didn't they try to get Robin Williams or somebody like that to put the mask on and be the bad guy at the end? Because like then you'd have a totally different villain mask thing, and it would be like, oh, this is great for the third act. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, baby.
I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. Can you imagine what Robin Williams would have done with the mask on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they could get someone who could go, tit for tat with Jim Carrey,
and that's what we need. Yeah, that's what.
But they actually got a really like Eric Roberts looking motherfucker, who's like kind of whatever.
He was the
like, he's fine.
He
did a good job, but he's good at like the crony, like he's good at like the seedy underbelly. Like I have my own dreams. He's like tortured and like it's tough for him. Like he just doesn't have like the charisma and star power like Jim Carrey does.
Of course not. Let me tell you what
they just avoided doing it.
Let me tell you what he's amazing at. Let me tell you what he's fucking amazing at. In the movie Usual Suspects, he is amazing at flicking cigarettes. He's the guy. He's the guy that flicks that cigarette right in. I think it's McManus, not Alec Baldwin, the other Baldwin, Stephen Baldwin's eye.
Mm-hmm.
He flicks that cigarette, it hits him right in the eye, and it's fucking awesome. Like it's like, wow, dude. He's a real great sleaze in that movie, which I enjoy better than this movie. Yeah, I was just kind of disappointed by the idea of like, oh, so other people are going to put on the mask. Like, but none of them are going to do anything even close to what Jim Carrey's doing.
Because
that's a missed opportunity.
Like, how do you do that? I mean, how do you do that?
Right, I know. You don't cast.
I think if they wrote it that way and they had to go get that would be amazing. But they didn't because I think they knew their limitations in that front.
Well, you say that, and I agree with you. Of course, I'm sure that's true because it's obvious
in the 1994 context. I think movies now we could be a little more fast and loose.
They're shooting on a stage very clearly, like it's very clearly on like a set, right, for the most part. Right. And Jim Carrey is like nuclear hot at this point in his career, right? Like he'd already done Ace Ventura. He was probably like minutes away from filming Dumb and Dumber, right? And the Ace Ventura sequel. So I feel like it's weird that they didn't try to. I think he also, by the way, done The Cable Guy at this point. Like it's weird that they didn't try to like get a big counter star because they like it would have made a big difference. Like even if it had been somebody on the level of Sean Young in Ace Ventura, who's a really decent foil to Jim Carrey, like I have my objections to that character and to even the performance.
But she brings it.
She's going for it. That's exactly it. We need somebody who's going for it, who's also in this world. Like that's what's missing in the movie to me is like we need Al Pacino as the same character he was in Dick Tracy.
A nice ass.
Right? What's the character he plays in Dick Tracy?
I don't fucking know.
He's that weird.
I know what he looks like. I don't. Other than Mumbles, I don't know a single name.
Oh, Mumble and Flat Top. Flat Top's
Flat Top. Probably.
I'm gonna look it up because
he's not Mumbles. He's not Dick Tracy. So who knows? I don't care.
I don't fucking care.
But I know what you're talking about. Like, yeah, everyone's 11 in that movie.
Well, that's what we needed, I think.
Except Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty's like a real 6 in that movie. I completely agree. But that actually is fine, right?
In the movie.
Yeah. That's actually fine. That was the thing that was kind of like the movie felt more joyless to me than I remembered because to me, like, I'm not thrilled with the CGI computer effects of the mask. Like, not just because they're bad, like, for now. They're also just not as interesting as Jim Carrey is, right? Like, aren't you more interested in Jim Carrey?
Yeah. I mean, when he becomes Wolfie, Auga.
Well, but that's right. It's when he puts the mask on, exactly. So, like, to me, it's like, it just felt like half of a sketch idea. Where it's like, oh, but we're missing that Maz Juste thing that would have made this sketch like we would have remembered it forever.
I mean, you had me when you were like, what if it was Alan Rickman? And
Alan Rickman would have crushed the earth with this.
No, like I don't know where to go from there because you're just right.
Right. I'm sorry. I don't know.
I think we all would. No, I'm not trying to shit on your theory. I'm just saying you're absolutely right. I have no notes.
Yeah.
Like that would be an amazing movie. I wish they were that bold.
I feel like they had the money. It just felt very like, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. This movie did gangbusters, by the way.
Yeah, of course it did. Jim Carrey was like a nuclear bomb in the entertainment industry, like for a good 6-7 years there. Yeah. Like he did everything, and he made a fuckload of movies too. He was everywhere. And The Mask was like, this is why I remember the movie so well. The advertisements were ubiquitous. As I said, like I remembered all the lines from the trailer as I was watching it. I'm just looking for it. My mask.
Yeah, it's it was a $20 million to make budget wise. It made $350 million.
That is a mammoth success. That is
unbelievable. For 1994. I mean, it was a summer movie, so it was supposed. They knew it was, but yeesh, right?
It probably got pumped up to a summer movie after Ace Ventura, right?
Yeah,
that's my guess. Like, I mean, we could look into the history of this here, but like, if you look at Jim Carrey's IMDb, which I'm going to do right now, I'm looking down at his filmography here.
It was the same year as Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and so 1994 was the year that he arrived, because Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber all came out in 1994.
Wow.
And then 95 was Batman Forever and
Ace Ventura 2.
And then Cable 96 was Cable Guy, 97 was Liar Liar, 98 was Truman Show.
So I'm guessing that like people before Ace Ventura came out, people were already like, dude, you got to get Jim Carrey. You got to get him. Right? Because that's the only way the math makes sense to me. Of making those three movies in 1 year.
I haven't looked into it.
I mean, because that's very curious to me. There's no way that Ace Ventura comes out. People are like, this guy's a big commodity. And then he films The Mask and Dumb and Dumber in time for them both to release that year. No chance that happened.
Yeah, I mean, Ace Ventura came out in February.
Right.
July was The Mask. Right. And Dumb and Dumber was
in the winter. And so everybody was losing their minds by that time. Like, yeah.
By the time Dumb and Dumber came out, it's like the least high concept of all of them. And everyone was like, I'm going to go see it. And Dumb and Dumber, by the way, was also made for less than $20 million, and it made $250. So of that year,
it made less money than The Mask.
The Mask made the most money by a large, like The Mask. Okay, so $15 million Ace Ventura, that's budget. $100 million box office. The Mask, again, those numbers being 18 to 23 million, 350.
Yeah,
and Dumb and Dumber, 17 million. 250. So like about 300% of 300% of Ace Ventura, and like 33% of more 133% of Dumb and Dumber. So it's like by far the best of the three in terms of like,
box office. That's very surprising.
I think, and I mean it's because it's like a wild premise. Look at them. And also it's riding the Ace Ventura wave, because that doesn't keep into account like it's like word of mouth and stuff,
the sheer amount, the volume of people who rented Ace Ventura or bought the tape.
That's right.
Is like mammoth, like way more than they made in the theaters for sure.
Yeah.
So
and all three of these became cult successes as well, like you said.
Well, Dumb and Dumber,
like for years,
is still funny. Isn't it? I haven't watched it in a while, but I watched it about 5 years ago. I thought it was still pretty funny.
I mean, it's funny in the 90s way. Like when you realize that most of the jokes in Dumb and Dumber and like these they're references to like a bygone era. Like
right.
There's Forrest Gump jokes in Dumb and Dumber,
there's some, but
you lose your mind when you like walked out of the theater 2 months before or 3 months before, and then like you walk into another movie and they're like spoofing that movie that you just were like, oh, I just watched this like months ago.
Yeah, that was weird.
You lose your fucking mind as like a little kid, because you're like, they're like all talking to each other. It's like I'm a part of like a zeitgeist, and that now is just, it's all like
that couldn't happen. And also Forrest Gump was in theaters forever. It was in theaters for a really long time,
Right.
as I recall. That was a huge hit. Dumb and Dumber still has things in it. I mean, that's not what this is about, but like I'll still always laugh at the way he fucking squirts ketchup and mustard into his face you know what I mean? Like, or like our pets' heads are falling off, or you know what I mean? Like, there's just stuff that's like, yeah, man, this is great. And The Mask did not do any of that for me, and Ace Ventura did a tiny little bit of it for me when we went and watched that for this show. So I guess we're gonna have to do a Dumb and Dumber director piece.
I could listen to this forever. Just you saying like, you know what? 2 stars.
This is how much I liked it.
Jim Carrey, 2 stars in this one. But just like let's talk about Jim Carrey by Adam Ganser. I love it. I fucking love it.
What blows my mind about it, dude? Because think about this. Like honestly, think about this. If you're a filmmaker, in 1 year, this man goes from obscure comic on a show that was like a less popular show than SNL to the biggest star in the cinema since Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like he is a mountain of a success in 1 fucking year.
In 1 fucking year.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. February, July, December, get out of town.
And it's like the guy made almost $1 billion in 90s money.
And 1994 is not a year to slouch. Like that's a good year.
Yeah.
That's a good movie year.
Yes, it is. Pulp Fiction's out.
Formatively in our generation, that 94, 95, 96. Ooh, baby.
Those are really good years. Yeah.
You got a lot of like big films that like
definitely
lasted in the minds of many people for a long time.
Definitely. I mean, that's when I did that class at when I did that Buñuel and Almodovar class at USC, they would casually reference the golden era of cinema as the 90s in the US. Like that's
really?
That's
I mean, that's definitely the golden era of blockbuster.
I think that's what they meant in this context, but it's been a long time because we were talking a lot about Franco as a dictator in Spain. So I don't know, man.
I don't know, man.
I don't know, man.
I don't know, man.
Anyway, but if you're a director in 1994 and you have Jim Carrey doing this concept, right? If you're in that situation, like you got bottled lightning here.
Oh yeah. That's what led them to the following year. That's why Batman Forever, he's so unhinged. It's like
I kind of like him in that though. I kind of like the way he did that.
When someone gets so much success, they don't get edited.
Right.
And so they're like letting them loose the next year. Because they're like, holy shit, Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber. What else you got, buddy? We're just going to let you go because you cannot go wrong.
You can't miss.
And then after that, they're like, you know what? Maybe we start doing a little bit more like, subdued Cable Guys and Liar Liars and Truman Show.
He was great in Cable Guy, by the way. That's
still him, but like
Ben Stiller directed that movie. And I tried to get a director piece out of it and I could not. He made like, I don't know, 7 very memorable films between 1994 and 1998 when he did The Truman Show.
Oh yeah.
That's
no doubt.
Like The Truman Show is like an anti-Jim Carrey movie, and that's only 4 years after he even splashed onto the scene. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. Like Liar Liar is a fucking great movie, as I recall. It's been a while, but The Cable Guy is also a very good movie, as I recall. Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah, just very impressed with the work he did.
Let's just name Jim Carrey movie. Bruce Almighty, baby.
That's a return to form, right?
Do you remember the incredible Burt Wonderstone?
Yes, I do.
Dude, how good is he though in Kick-Ass 2 though?
Honestly,
have you seen that movie?
I think Jim Carrey is so good at being all the way committed that even if I don't like the joke, I enjoy the acting, like the commitment on an actor level.
Oh yeah, like he does a lot of and he wanted to show the world that like in the Truman Show and Man on the Moon, and he had this phase.
He's not an unhinged maniac.
The late 90s.
Right.
He's not just a maniac, but like he also has the subtlety. Like Kick-Ass 2 was amazing to me because like he had done his like subdued phase. He'd done stuff like Eternal Sunshine and Spotless Mind, but he kind of never returned. Like he did. Didn't he did some of the like the Grinch and stuff. He did like
that was
a lot of
in 2000.
But they were like children's stuff.
Right.
But like when Kick-Ass 2 came, like it was like, you are still Ace Ventura in this role, but it's like, it's so different because the context, and he's so aware of it that I have to give it to him for that movie. That performance is super good.
I think he's
I'm not
kind
the
of
biggest Jim Carrey fan.
I'm not either. I think he's kind of good in like the way that a movie star can be kind of good. Like he's not an actor in the same way that like everybody else, for instance, in The Mask is, right? Even Cameron Diaz is an actor in that movie. Like they're trying to play the scene, they're trying to respond to what he's doing. That's not what he's doing. Even when he's Stanley Ipkiss, he can't really do that. He's there to get to the bit as fast as he can get to it and try to make bits out of stuff that may not be bits, which is a different job than acting.
I mean, Robin Williams, like you said before, is,
right.
I think perfectly in terms of like a decade or so earlier, doing essentially the same thing.
It's a thing that only a few comedians get to do, but it is kind of, this is the best achievement we have for comedians in movies,
If you think about, like, when did Good Morning Vietnam come out?
1988. Also very good. Yeah.
In 1988, that's actually later than I thought, but like Good Morning Vietnam, like that wasn't really comedy. You didn't do that kind of stuff where it was just like, just fucking go. Just go.
87, by the
Robbie.
way. 87.
And that kind of like primed us, obviously, for animated stuff had been doing that forever because it's a cartoon, literally. But like Robin Williams doing like the genie, that makes 100% makes sense. But Good Morning Vietnam is like very akin to like a, like almost less than a decade version of like what The Mask is, which is just like, what are the scenes for? Like, where does the comedy come from?
Exactly.
Well, no one matters in this movie, literally, except for the scenes where, like, Robin Williams on the radio, and the scenes where Stanley Ipkiss is not Stanley Ipkiss. He's got a mask on. It's like, it's 100% of that stuff.
Well, and the funny thing is, Good Morning Vietnam is like not a comedy. Like it's a drama, basically, where they have like, and now we're gonna do jokes for a good like 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's par for the course for like 80s like comedies.
Yeah,
like Groundhog Day and stuff like that. We still were using those actors in like the early 90s.
Right.
That still hadn't left. It was a new breeds of comedians, I think, is how in the same way that Will Ferrell in the early 2000s kind of revolutionized how comedies were doing. Like, what's the brand of comedy? Well, everyone's looking to Will Ferrell to see like, oh, it's just like, just let him improv.
Yes,
just let him improv.
It's sketch improv. Yes,
just scenarios and bits in character.
Right,
and then that became comedy for a decade
until we got tired of it.
Still to this day.
Yeah,
but then it moved on. Because comedy changes less than every decade. Completely.
100%. It's also hard to know what the next big trend in comedy will be because the internet has made comedy a lot more available and localized in some ways. Yeah, I don't know. I love this work that you did on The Mask because, again, I'm thinking of myself as the guy having to direct Jim Carrey. And we've done work, with very talented comedic actors. Not Jim Carrey yet, someday perhaps. But, like, I just imagine, like, how do you make a thing that feels like you've hung this thing together artistically when the goal of the enterprise is to let this guy go wild and not plan it, right? Like, isn't that the goal of a Jim Carrey movie? Is like, let's let this guy do what he's going to do, and
absolutely.
And you have to kind of create a box around him, and try to, as a director, feel like, man, we made a whole cohesive project with those restraints. That's very hard, I think.
I think you communicate and you make, like, the boxing in, that doesn't make as much sense to me. You make their goal your goal.
No, but I don't mean box. Right, box in's the wrong term. I'll keep using wrong terms if you let me. Box. I just mean like you're trying to create a container in which this performance goes. right? It's almost like I'm trying to create a mug for this coffee. You know what I mean? Like the coffee is what you're drinking, but I want the experience to feel like that's a great mug of coffee.
Right. Yeah. You're not talking about like if the coffee wants to like, I want to fly free. It's like, we're not talking about that.
We can't drink you then.
Yeah. No. I see what you're talking about. You a vessel. A vehicle for him
that enhances. Ideally, that's really hard in a thing like this.
It's hard, and I think that's the kind of tempered hand. That's also the big thing that I had a big disagreement with my comedy professors at USC.
They never liked that. Yeah,
they did not like me.
Yeah. I loved it. By the way, funny. I love this shit.
And they always thought that like you needed to. Like, I don't know. I don't want to get into it, but it's like there is a philosophical difference between, I would say, comedy directors and comedy actors of a different age and of different generations have different philosophies about how you approach this exact problem.
Yep.
Which is whose movie is it?
Yeah, that's the thing.
And is like at the heart of the question. And the answer to me is very clear, which is why are you going to the movie? What do you think the people are like? And it's once you have that answer, you make all decisions in that direction.
Which is why most people in film school didn't make comedies.
Yes.
It's not that they didn't like them. They do like them.
There's an essential collaboration that they're teaching, and it goes in the face of that. And that's kind of why comedy is comedy. It's funny because it's different. It's funny because it zags when it should zig, or whatever. It does what it wants. And people see these walls. People see these things of how things should be done, and they notice that, and they notice like, oh yeah, there's a reason why we do things this way. People usually. Everyone kind of admits that there's like a logic to why we do a thing a certain way. But when something's funny, it's usually pointing out at that thing and saying, it's kind of silly that we say that this is the right way to do it. Right. And so like the very premise of most comedy is to throw in the face of that tradition structure. And I don't know, it's not like I'm punk rock or anything. I just always was like, you are defining things like laughably to be disagreed with. Like you're working in a space where the whole point is to disagree with tradition, and you're telling us, so here are the rules of comedy. And I'm like, you don't I feel like you're not listening, is like what I want to say to a lot of these.
You should have said that. That would have been interesting.
I kind of did. And then I never went to that class again. And he did not like me. And he also gave me a C. Because at USC, when you...
In grad school.
I know.
Wow.
Well, it's because I didn't go.
Yeah, but...
I just stopped going to the class. Yeah, I know.
Like, you can't... You have to really try to not get a B in grad school.
I had to have a conversation with Jed, R.I.P.
Yeah,
who was kind of a counselor, kind of professor.
Yeah, he was the head. Yeah,
he's a cool guy, and he was like, "What's going on here? Why aren't you going to these classes?" I'm like, "I don't feel value in it and stuff." There was a conversation. He was like, "Fair enough."
And he said, "Fair enough."
USC isn't gonna flunk you. Amazing. Because you're paying all the loans that you have. So it's like, what are you gonna do? Bankrupt me? Kick me out of here? They're like, no, we're just gonna. This is going to matter nothing, because also no one cares about grades in art school. It's not like anyone's like, I got an A. I have a 4.0 in art.
That's a thing. You need to hire me because I
have on my resume.
I have the great
jobs.
art. Yeah.
That's so funny.
That's the thing I tell my students all the time is like, look, care about the grades because of your professionalism, but don't care about them as a indicator of your talent, because they're not that. Mm-hmm.
That's very good. That's a very good thing for you to tell your students, I think.
Well, it's the truth. It's
honest. Yeah. Some people might take it the bad way, and you're like, so you're saying none of this matters? No.
I wish somebody would ask me that. So you're saying none of this matters?
No, because the answer, no one's going to say that, because everyone understands that there's a difference between education and learning.
Yes, that's accurate. And also, I think that they, in general, college students appreciate being like the thing they feel being validated about the way systems work, which is, yeah, man, this is a thing we built. It's not perfect. This is how grades, this is what they actually mean. So, find a different objective marker for your value, my friend. You know, or ideally find a subjective one that you can live with the rest of your life. Try that.
Mm-hmm. We should probably wrap up, but I just want to say I really like this conversation that we're having. As Product of Mask, it's kind of like a mask off conversation, like a little bit of truth, a little bit of learning.
I hate what you did. I hate the way you're ending this. I hate your sentimentality. I hate it.
Somebody stop me.
Yeah.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!